Welcome back, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and kind of work through some questions that are on ClassKick. So what I'd like you to try to do is to have a split screen, and on one side I want you to have ClassKick open, and then in the other side I want you to try to open up a separate window, a separate tab with this video that's in YouTube, so that hopefully you can write on the screen as you're listening to the YouTube video. Alright, so if we start with this first slide here, a couple things that I'd like you to do. I'd like you to log into Infinite Campus at some point while you're in class today and trying to look to see what you have completed and what's blank. If an assignment's left blank, that means that it was not finished. It possibly wasn't even started. So if you need any help with that, please go ahead and reach out to your teacher so that we can try to help you to get those points in. Next thing I'd like you to do is complete the Padlet, where you're going to submit an answer for each column. That's going to be part of your assignment today. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into some square root equations. Alright, so this slide will give you the link for the Padlet. So you can click on that and then go ahead and answer that. It doesn't have to be done right now, or if you want to pause and do it, go ahead. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to start with this numeracy, and we're going to do one of these together, and then I'm going to have you do the other one on your own. But I want you to try to remember how to graph a parabola, because this is going to lead us into hopefully a connection of what we're going to be making over the next day or so. So remember that when you are graphing a parabola, the first thing you need to do is find the vertex. So if you remember your vertex value, it's the opposite of h and then the k value that's on the outside of the quantity that's being squared. So if I look at this, there is no h value in here, so we're going to assume it's 0. And then the k value is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to sketch out a little graph here. And I'm going to put my vertex at 0, 1. So 0, 1's right there. Now, remember, one of our qualities here is that we have to look to see if the parabola is going to open upwards or downwards. Since there is a negative right here, I want you to remember that the parabola is going to open downwards because it's a reflection. And then neither one of these are going to have a stretch or a compression. We're not going to make them any wider or any narrower. We're just going to see if you can remember the pattern, which is, remember, it's over 1, up 1. Since it's opening down, it's over 1, down 1. Over 2, down 4. And then over 3, down, hopefully remember 9. Because remember, we're just taking those numbers and we're squaring them. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9. And I want you to identify what the zeros are. So the zeros here are -1 and 1. Remember, the zeros are where the graph crosses the x-axis. It's the x-intercept. You're going to put those values, one in each one of these boxes, and you're going to type it in. With anything that has to do with these boxes, you can't handwrite it in, but if you type it in, it will score it for you so that you know if you're doing this correct or not. So you can go ahead and type those in, and then I'd like you to try the next one on your own and put those values in as we'll be looking through those. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start going through some square root equations. Okay? And a square root equation example of that is already over here. N squared equals the square root of 1,444. So you hopefully remember from doing Pythagorean theorem that in order to remove something that is squared, I'm going to end up having to take the square root. So if I square root each side, the square root of 1,444, you can go ahead and you could use either Desmos to help you with this, or if you have a handheld calculator, that would probably be the best thing at this point for you to use. But the square root of 1,444 is going to be 38. Now, the one piece that's different is you have to remember that if I take 38 and I square it, it will give us 1,444. But also if I take -38 and I put that in parentheses and I square it, I will also get 1,444. So my answer is just not 38, it's also -38. And the way that I can write that in kind of a quicker way is going to be n is going to equal plus or minus 38. So I'm going to write that as a plus or a minus 38. So there's two answers to this. So how do I recognize something that's going to be solved with square roots? Well, you're going to have a y squared or an x squared. You're only going to have that variable in the equation. No x, no y. It has to be something that's squared and only squared. Okay, and how do you take it, or how do you solve it? Well, you're going to take square roots to solve. Okay, so back to how do you recognize it? You should have only a y squared or an x squared and some basic numbers. That's it. All right, so if I go down here and I look at my other example of v squared equals negative 894, if I take the square root of both of those, the square root of v squared is v. Now it's asking me to take the square root of a negative number. Well, technically we can't take the square root of a negative number. So our answer to this is no real solution. There is a solution. It's imaginary. There is going to be a value that you're going to learn called I that has some complex numbers with it. You don't need to worry too much about that right now, but the key here is no real solution. If you go to type this in a question that we have like on ClassKick, you can just enter it as no solution, but I want you to know that there is a solution that actually exists. Okay, now same thing here. We're going to solve these just like we solve regular equations. We're going to try to isolate the variable. There's nothing different about how you recognize these or how you solve these. It's still just something that's x squared or y squared and then just some numbers. So if I were to solve this like a regular equation, I would solve by subtracting 17. I'd have n squared equals 361. I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of 361, which is going to be 19. Now remember we talked about two answers, so it could be a positive 19 or a negative 19, so we're going to write that as plus or minus 19. Looking at this equation here, to isolate p, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6. So if I divide negative 1908 by negative 6, I'm going to get 318. And then how do I solve this? Well, I simply take the square root. So the square root of 318 is a decimal. It's 17.83. We're going to ask you to round everything in here to the nearest tenth. So this is going to be p equals 17.8. And don't forget that it's plus or minus. There's two answers. All right, so then looking at this next slide here, it's the same thing. We're going to keep combining everything that we've been doing. Our goal is to isolate the variable, same way that we've been working. We're going to add 5 to both sides. 7x squared equals 343. Going to divide by 7. I'm going to get 49. X squared equals 49. So to solve that, I'm going to take the square root. I'll write my answer here at the top since I ran out of room. X is going to equal 7. But don't forget, it could be plus or minus. It could be positive or negative. I'm looking at this final example here. I'm going to go ahead and add 7 to both sides. We're solving it just like we would solve any equation. 8x squared equals 80. Divide by 8. X squared equals 10. To solve that, we're going to go ahead and take the square root. Keeping in mind that some of these might be a decimal. We're going to round to the nearest tenth, so this is going to be x equals 3.2, and it could be plus or minus 3.2. All right, so you're now going to go ahead and you're going to complete slide 7, 8, and 9. You're going to make sure that you enter your answers by typing them into the box so it self-checks it for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and write them on the very last slide, on slide 10. Remember to go ahead and put your hand up when you have finished only the gray slides, only slides 7, 8, 9, 10. And also make sure you get your hand up when you have finished the zeros on the numeracy slide here, which is slide 3. Hope everyone has a great day. Don't forget to go on Infinite Campus and check to see what assignments are blank. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email. Have a great day, guys.